The first impression I had was, it was the first or second day that I had here in Porto Alegre, and I went straight out to the communities around Porto Alegre. The day was very, very intense in terms of learning about each context, and I could have spent a day at each context to even fully understand the social issues within each place, as everything is very contextual and it's all based around how things are influencing them from their aspect. So the day was very intense in terms of experiencing 5 different social issues, but the important thing was that it was amazing to learn about some of the good and some of the good things that have come out of those experiences. For example, when I was at the school and I saw how the school was trying to look for innovative ways to find recycling, taking old technology and using it as rubbish bins and using it to grow plants, etc. So it was good to see some form of upcycling and innovation within these areas with using waste. It was also great to go through to the recycling depot and learn about the structure there at the recycling depot and how they've created a good system there with the rubbish, and how they have a whole garden there that is used for the workers there, and they eat good, healthy, organic food at the work that they do at the recycling depot. So there were very, very many experiences, with the kids to going out to the bakery on entrepreneurship and seeing what that lady was doing outside the side of Porto Alegre with her bakery business and how she's trying to upscale it. And of course they all have their own story in themselves, and I think what's important to bring to light is how do these areas create leadership for themselves, and how are they facilitating themselves into their own experience, considering what they're being influenced by or impacted by. It's really difficult for me to bring myself into this experience that I don't understand the language or the place. All I can really do is from a very subjective point of view, kind of see how people are trying to help themselves. That for me was interesting to see how people are trying to help themselves, because specifically on the peripheries and on outside the cities, it's people living very difficult lives, and the governments can't really come to them for help, because it's just the way it is. The government is not able to really decentralize themselves enough to help the periphery areas. So that's why bringing people and seeing how people can help themselves is what's really interesting, and not only help themselves, but what I mean by that is the community around them. How does the community grow together in such a way to overcome difficulties? So, for example, at the school, how can that system at the school begin to grow around the community around it, to bring in kind of food security? My question is how can the kids be brought and facilitated into growing their own food within the school? Yes, this is difficult, and we can see it as a dream or a vision, but how could this new form of learning come into their education? And that begins from doing like nature does and learning from nature, and building from the bottom up. A tree doesn't grow from the top to the bottom. It has to understand where it is, its local context, its where it can get its food and resources. So same thing with the school. How can the school collect the biological waste that it can use to grow a compost? Where can it collect resources to collect mechanical resources or just technological resources that have been in the recycling dumps or something that could be used to build infrastructure for organic gardens? So instead of looking outside for answers, how can we look inside to find the answers? How can we find recycling to answer the question of food security? Once we begin to build from the bottom up, once we begin to grow the resilience from the food, the children can then begin to learn more about their natural area and how do they begin to clean up and grow things themselves. So projects, and I'm just bringing in some things that I've been doing in Cape Town with how things have grown and stemmed from that, you know. So it's very difficult to see how things might grow from a project like that, because things grow in a way that you can't predict and you cannot plan. So once you've begun to grow a garden, you might begin to create art and creativity for the kids and how they draw pictures around the walls there. And sometimes you have vertical gardens, and how do they begin to, you know, build things into vertical gardens, and you know, how do they begin to get their parents involved and take maybe some of these practices back home with them, and try and grow it there. So as I said, everything's very contextual and grows organically from its own foundation. And it's all about building your own, I believe at least, it's all about building your own contextual foundation and growing from that, you know, and realizing that you can create clean, vibrant communities, you know, once we begin to take leadership in ourselves and leadership in the community, and how do we work together in a relationship. You know, I try and bring all these concepts into the natural world. You know, when we're looking at nature, how does an ecosystem create resilience in itself? You know, how is the tree and the bird and the flower and the impala or the deer or the animal integrated within its own ecology? You know, how do they understand themselves, and you know, how they're not destroying one another and still allowing the diversity to exist. It's the same within any ecosystem. If the community or the area that you're in, if you can create resilience through understanding the relationships between the people, and who's good at building things, and who's good at taking leadership, and who's good at composting or cooking and cleaning or painting or any kind of creativity, and how do these relationships begin to work together to create a more vibrant, integral community. Yeah, so those are just my thoughts and my some of the feelings I got when I was walking around that one day. And of course, you know, the most important thing was for me to listen to the context, and you know, I don't have anything to specifically tell them that they should do. You know, all I can do is really listen to their context and give ideas, because everywhere is different, and every ecosystem is different. Yeah, it was really interesting, and I really wish that I could provide something more in the future, and I would like to come visit and see how things grow in the future. But it's very, very similar to Africa and the context of Africa. And I think Brazil and Africa have, if we can create a partnership in learning how we can begin to grow the periphery areas to be self-sufficient, and communities, self-sufficient communities. Thanks.